Stories like crazy, because everyone has mental health, and everyone has a story, and sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers who want to share their true life story. Get in the conversation with us and talk to us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on SoundCloud and iTunes. Now, let's smash some stigma. On this episode of Stories Like Crazy, we're actually going to talk to two people. We're going to talk to Haeven about her depression, self-harm, and anxiety at even a young age of 12 years old, and along with her father, Cliff, who has been a fantastic support system for her. In fact, these two are a dynamic duo, but you know what? Let them tell their story. Here, have a listen.
Well, my name's Cliff Ford, and I'm here with my daughter.
Haeven Ford.
And our story is kind of crazy, but it also sort of opened up sort of an avenue to us understanding a little bit more about what was going on in Haeven's mind. And, there was a tragic story, but it also became sort of a good story coming out of it. And so a little bit later, she'll sort of share what she's been dealing with over the last few years. But just to kind of give you the history, 3 years ago in 2014, a man found Haeven online and started to target her as an online predator. Started to groom her through some chatting on websites, and built sort of a trust relationship over a matter of a couple of weeks with her, and then started to get very inappropriate. This was a guy who was in his 30s, and at the time she was 12 years old. So very vulnerable, very susceptible to somebody who had the right words to say and to charm her. When I got involved, at one point he sent an email to her, and the email had the subject line, "Hey, sexy." And so as soon as I saw that come in on my phone, I went, wait a minute, who is this guy sending my 12-year-old comments about being sexy? And so I called Haeven right away, and I said, who is this guy? And she says, oh, he's just an online friend. Of course, he was portraying himself to be younger than in his 30s, and she had no idea. So I took over her account from there, and I basically spent 3 days conversing with this guy as my daughter and trying to find out everything I could about him. And we found out where he lived, where he worked, the car that he drove. We had pictures and profiles and everything else, and I basically packaged everything together and handed it over to the local police. He was from the States. We handed it over to his local police, and within a matter of a couple of days, they were knocking down his door and arrested him. And we found this out afterwards, that Haeven wasn't the only victim. He had a number of people that he had been approaching, but he was also in part of what was called a child porn ring, where individuals would collect whatever they could from kids and then share it amongst themselves. So, the nice thing is that it was caught early enough before anything major happened with Haeven, either online or in person, because obviously that's a real threat is, what if this guy had come up looking for her? But, there was thousands of kids' images that they found in his possession and in the possession of the people that he was dealing with. He was arrested, and he's now in prison till 2032 or something. Like, he got a really heavy sentence. Yeah.
Super dad, right? Super kid.
Super kid too, yeah.
Super duo.
Yeah, the openness that we had to be able to say what was going on really helped. But that story aside, that was really sort of just the catalyst for us to help understand what was going on in Haeven's mind. At the time, being 12 years old, she didn't necessarily know how to express the feelings that she was having, and the depression that she had been battling for some time now sort of came to light because of this situation, and because of that, we were able to start looking at ways to help her through it, ways to get her help, so maybe I'll let you take it from here, and you can tell us a little bit about what you've experienced.
Okay, so about my depression, I gotta say it started, I think it must have been throughout my life I've had it. I don't remember much about my childhood, so I can't say that I've ever really felt it, but it was really triggered when my Nana died from a heart attack when I was I think grade 6, right? And that really triggered my depression, and I got into self-harm. I started to cut myself a lot, and I fell into a pit, and I walked away from a lot, and I fell off the wagon, and so I think that went on for almost a year, and I would cut pretty often, and I don't think anyone, like, no one knew. I don't think my mom knew. No one really knew what was going on with me because I didn't know what I was feeling, so how could I say with someone else, like, oh, this is what I'm feeling so depressed, and, like, I didn't know what to put into words, and so, when my mom eventually did find out was, actually that night, that he was arrested, and I was in my bathroom, and I remember I was cutting, and, so I rely heavily on my faith, and so through it, obviously, I kind of, like, lost it, and through this cutting, but it was like that, in that moment, I kind of realized I needed to stop, like, I didn't want to do this anymore. It was it was because of triggers that I would cut, but I was always like, I don't want to do this. I never really deep down enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And so it was that moment I just was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I actually, miraculously, I don't think I actually really struggled with it, like, with getting off of it. I never had, like, a time where I had to go into, like, rehab or any, like, kind of state where I needed support. And I kind of it just stopped. The desire to cut left me, and obviously thanks to my dad, I didn't have that, that guy in my life anymore, and so I was able to pick myself back up, but, and so for a while I went through a period of, like, yay, everything's good, and when that faded, I realized my depression was a constant. It wasn't just, because my Nana died, or just because I was going through all this stuff, and so I struggled with it, like, every day, and at first it was kind of just that feeling of sadness throughout, but then it kind of get to the point where some days I couldn't smile, some days it was just, I just want to stay in bed all day, and other people saw it, I guess, like, my mom saw it as me being a lazy teenager as usual, but, like, she doesn't really have too much experience with that, and so I had to, like, after going to counseling, we started to talk about it more, and I kind of tried my best to explain what I was feeling, and I was doing good for a while then. I was starting to get better and starting to cope with it and learn what triggers me and what I can handle, and things were getting better, but then high school. Oh, man, high school. just high school. But yeah.
We all understand.
We all just nodded yes,
yes,
preaching to the choir.
High school sucks, man. I'm in grade 11 now. I'm almost done, but
You're doing it.
I'm surviving. It's good. But
put your time in, right?
Right? Eventually. But so in grade 9, I ended up meeting this guy, and I think that's when things started getting bad again, obviously. Mm-hmm. He's very, I found, like, emotionally manipulative, and through that, he started telling me about his mental health, and I kind of, like, registered with that, so I feel like it was more prominent in my life because we both were struggling together. And so I started to develop anxiety, and throughout, I guess, I don't know what triggered it with our relationship, but I was anxious a lot, and I had anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and I never got back into cutting until we ended up breaking up in, I think, like, 6 months later in the summer or something like that. We ended up breaking up, and that's when I don't think I cut too much. I think maybe, like, it lasted a day or two, and then I was like, no, I'm not going to let this guy ruin my life after, like, 3 years clean, right? And so, so I stopped that, but obviously the anxiety did not leave, and ever since then I've been struggling with a lot of anxiety, especially lately. I've noticed it with stress with school and, like, finding a job and getting my driver's license, and, like, everything seems so much.
That might be more stress for your dad.
Oh yeah,
True.
I think so.
It's true. There's a lot of anxiety on that one.
Just you wait till I drive. Oh man,
Yeah.
sorry.
You know, the amazing thing is, growing up, Haeven has been true to her name. She's a haven to the people around her. If somebody's in need, if somebody needs, just a warm hug or whatever it is, she's always there for them. And I think part of the problem with when you're like that is that you don't know how to get help for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You don't know how to step back.
Yeah.
You can give and you can give, but you can't receive
Yes.
the love and the support that you need. And I think that was sort of a watershed moment for you when you finally said, you know what, no, I think I do need to talk to somebody. I think I need to get extra help and work through my issues that way.
Yeah, like, I'm going to counseling right now, and it's been very beneficial to me. it's been really helpful, like the way he's like been putting things, and it's been, I mean, I'm still struggling, but at least I'm learning to cope and learning what my true feelings are underneath, because sometimes it's confusing, like I'm feeling depressed, but what's really behind it, and it's kind of amazing when you learn about that. And actually, because of that, I've been really interested in the field of psychology, so
Good girl.
I really want to go into that to help people who were in the same place or are in the same place as I am, because I always thought I was alone, and I always thought I was the only one feeling this way, which is crazy, because I'm not, right?
Everybody deals with it in
Everyone,
one way.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
In one point in your life, you're gonna feel this, right?
Well, it's the whole, there is mental health, and
Yeah.
everyone has mental health. And unfortunately, with stigma and stereotypes, you say mental health, and the brain goes to illness.
Exactly.
Right? Or to
Right.
crazy,
Yeah.
insane, or weak. Right? That's the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And really, it's just a spectrum, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum.
Absolutely.
Right?
Sliding around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's so true.
And sometimes that spectrum is a little more dangerous, and sometimes it's manageable, and you have to learn to ride out those waves. For myself, I've never really seen an issue with anxiety or depression, but I have a lot of negative self-talk I deal with on a regular basis. I get sort of these waves every few years. I'll just go into this really dark period where it's like, everything around me feels like it's crumbling, and then the negative self-talk is there and just saying you can't get through this, and I've had to learn to manage that. But I look at somebody like Haeven, where it's a daily struggle. Even on the best days, there's still that nagging in the back of your mind of these negative feelings, and people that have to deal with that on a regular basis, I think they're the heroes in the sense that they can push past that and help other people and help themselves by going through those hurdles.
So well said, because I think if you look at sort of, at least what's helped in my experience with my mental illness is almost making it like a separate being that happens to be beside me. Sometimes he's behind me and he's hanging on my back and I'm doing well, and other times there's crawl around in my ear or beside me, and I've just found that when you do start recognizing you, that is just a piece, and you have more control than you think you do. It's like taking the car keys back, speaking of license. But earlier on, before you started looking deeper, and which I'm going to cry, so because and I don't want to be patronizing, you're so young, and to be able to have that kind of insight and that reflection, and just to be able to say, okay, you know what, maybe depression is part of who you are, but it isn't who you are. Right? And if you think that it's, we just said in the last podcast, an annoying relative that comes out every once in a while, and Christmas is coming, right? You're going to see some, and you wait for it to be over, and then and I think we spend a lot of time struggling trying to get rid of it. And what if we just said, like you're doing, how do I live with it and be okay with who I am still? Right?
Yeah, I used to say that she struggled with depression, and I think that says that depression is winning, and like there's a battle that's being fought, and you're constantly behind the eight ball with it. Whereas I think the coping, like you were saying, learning to work with it and deal with it and make it a positive part of your life is totally doable. And I think Haven's on the right path for that, in the sense of she's understanding who she is and knowing where she's vulnerable, but also knowing how she can push through it and be a better person through it as well.
And then you understand the strength that you have that perhaps you never thought was there.
Exactly.
You think, wow, I'm doing this. I'm managing this. And it's I say this to Adria all the time. It is really cool having a mental illness, because I'm far more in touch with other people's emotions. The ability, that's where the empath comes in.
I've noticed that,
right? And not that you want to counsel everybody, but you can feel for other people and have maybe more patience with other people, because there is that sense that everybody has their shit, right? Everybody does. And so maybe you're not going to be friends with everybody you meet, but maybe I can have a little more patience. And I think when you're dealing with your mental illness, you're annoyingly so in touch with your own feelings. Isn't it nice to focus on somebody else's feelings once in a while?
It's so relieving.
Because it's so narcissistic. Yeah. Mental illness is so, that's why you got to go, shut up.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So there are good things to it, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's really good. And yeah, I've noticed, like, for example, since I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with social anxiety. And I've noticed now, because I used to have a lot of struggles in my own family, in my own household, like, trying to tell them, hey, this is not a good day for me, don't patronize me, right? And I don't want to sound rude, I don't want to be angry and, like, yell at them, but I want to be able to, like, tell them so that they understand. And so I've found ways to do that over the years. Like, it's really good to sit down with my mom sometimes and be like, hey, the way you said this, it kind of triggered me, or the way you handled this, I would not handle it like that. And having that communication, I feel like, is really good for how you survive in your house, right?
Right.
So I've had days where it's just like, I need to get out of here. Like, I can't.
Well,
man.
Remember there was a time, I guess, 2 or 3 months ago where you were just having a really, really tough day. And we don't live in the same house. Like, her mom and I are separated. But I get a call from her mom, and she's like, Haeven's locked herself in the bathroom. She won't come out. I think she's really upset. I don't know what to do. I just want to get her out. And she won't respond to anything I'm doing. And she was panicking because as a mother, you worry, like, what's going on behind this closed door? And so I tried to call Haeven on her cell phone, knowing she would have it in there with her. Mm-hmm. And she instantly responded back, this is not a good time. Text me if you want to talk. And I said, okay, do you want to chat versus text? And we ended up spending 2 hours just texting back and forth from the bathroom. And meanwhile, I'm also messaging her mom saying, look, she's fine. She just needs her space. Yeah, and sometimes you need to, as a parent, you need to back off and say, no, you know what? You're allowed to be you. Yeah. I don't need you to act the way I want you to act. You be you. As long as you're safe, that's all that matters to me. Yeah. And that, that happens, and you need to allow for that.
Because at the end of the day, having that panic attack, because it sounds like it might have been.
Oh yeah, 100%.
In the safety of your home, right? Yeah. And knowing that the thing that mom is seeing is locked in, isolating, yelling at me, and she's seeing all the negative, but really if you could take a step back and be like, wait a minute, she chose to do this here. She's not running away. Yeah. Still communicating, right? And like to try and at least see the nuggets that are positive coming from this, because at least you didn't, you left yourself at home and you ran away, and now everybody's freaking out. Yeah. That you're like, you know what? I'm going to lock myself in the bathroom because it's safe.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I need safe right now because I don't feel safe right now.
Yeah.
So that's really great, and I have to commend the fact that you are relying on your parents, because not a lot of people do.
Yeah, I
100%. Really want our listeners to have a moment and maybe text their parents. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can always love them and let them know, because parenting is hard.
Yes, it is.
Adulting is hard.
Yeah.
You're getting your license and you're having to put up with stupid boys, throw rocks at them. Please don't actually throw rocks at them. It's just a saying. There was a meme that went around. I just said it and then I regretted it. But boys are dumb. And like, there's a lot of stuff as well. And then parents are watching you like a television show, because they want to be involved, but they're very much witnesses.
Exactly.
And they're just like, we want to help you, and it's but you can lead a horse to water, right? We can say, don't do this, it'll hurt you.
True words.
Right? But you're gonna be like, well, I need to figure it out for myself. And that's what, and like what you're saying, Cliff, is you need to do you, and you need to live your life, because you need those life experiences to know what's good, what's bad, what's for you and what's not for you.
Yeah.
And that's freaking hard. And the fact that you are, like, again, Lori's saying, you're very young, and that's because we're very old. And that it's so awesome to see in you what I think we all wish we had as a resource, because there was so much stigma, and we're talking now because the fact that people want to listen or follow our Twitter because we're a mental health podcast, like I just don't, like, it blows my mind that it's so well accepted. Yes. And that the stigma is lessening. It's still there. It'll take time. It might not ever really truly go away. Because it's by accepting mental illness and mental health as a general spectrum, not necessarily the good or the bad, but the everything. It means that that there are dark recesses in our hearts and in our brains that we have to address.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
it's shining light on the boogeyman, right? And the boogeyman sucks because he's scary and he makes us
wants to
feel
hurt
bad
you.
feels. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And he
true.
makes us want to cut, and he makes us want to run away, and he makes us want
Drink.
to binge eat and drink and do cocaine or whatever stupid things that the boogeyman tells us to do. And then it by accepting that, by destigmatizing that, what does that mean? And I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
In this really weird gray zone of not right, not wrong, like it can just be, and that in itself is really scary. So I mean, holy jeez, my brain is going crazy and my heart is exploding that you are your age, and like what an amazing adulthood you're gonna have.
Yeah.
Because you can phone up your dad and be like, Dad, I'm having a terrible, awful, no good day. Like can we talk? And Dad's going to be able to say, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of I'm at work right now, or we don't talk about this.
Suck it up.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
Be a big girl. Put on your big girl panties. Like this is shit that people used to say, and
Well, they
still
still
do.
say it.
They do,
They
yeah.
still say it.
My family still says this shit to me, where
Yeah.
they're just like, Adri, put on your big girl panties and deal. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Oh,
I was looking for not necessarily validation, but at least a sounding board like that you used with your dad.
And to know somebody's in your corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You may not
Yeah.
understand, but at least I know you're standing with me and not against me.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
It is mind blowing. It's mind blowing because I'm the mother of a teenager. My son is your age, and he has the diagnosis of OCD, generalized anxiety. Thank good, because depression is very deep in our family. My father was bipolar. I'm bipolar. You're not supposed to say that you are bipolar. You're supposed to say I have bipolar disorder, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But what's amazing with the conversation starting with hopefully parents like us, because you talk to Haeven, I talk to Jazz. Those are Haeven and Jazz.
Those are some cool ass names.
Cool names.
You guys need to start a band.
Yes, you do.
I should.
But it's having the ability to. He'll ask me questions every once in a while. Because we're very close, and he'll say, "Are you off? Like, are you off?" And I'll say, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're not happy today," and I'll say. First, years ago, I would say, "Oh, don't be silly. It's fine."
Yeah. Oh, everything's good.
I would say to him, "No, you know what? You're right. I am having a day, and I am probably, I'm telling you now, a little more irritable than I would normally be. So I might bite your head off." And he's like, "Heads up."
I
he
have
does
those
that.
days too.
Right.
Fair warning.
But it's
I get
fair
that.
warning, and it's amazing when you can have those conversations in your family, because then on the flip side of it, then your kid doesn't think you hate them, right? And you become human.
Yeah. it's
Right?
true.
And I'll cry for no reason, as you do, and he'll come in and say, "What are you crying about?" And I'll say nothing, and he'll go, "Well, that okay, all right." And then he'll say, "Can I have the last Coke?" And because he's a boy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not this big terrifying thing all the time.
Yeah.
It's like having diabetes and saying you've got to stay away from this kind of food. You've got to make sure you test your blood sugar. You've got to make sure this. Well, with mine, I've got to make sure I do the things that have been recommended for me.
Yeah.
And I think that with these kinds of conversations, it becomes just part of the fabric, or hopefully, of being human. Because we all have mental health issues. Every last one of us, whether it's diagnosable, in my case, situational, in a lot of cases, no less valid.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's critical. I want people to know that, because people will say, "Well, I don't have depression. I don't have generalized anxiety. God knows I don't have bipolar or schizophrenia. I'm fine." You can still be depressed. You can
Yes.
still be anxious.
Yeah,
You can-
situational depression is
It's huge.
rampant, and a lot of people are
Grief.
like grief,
Right?
Oh,
Divorce, pain.
Any kind of loss. Like a dear friend of ours has lost her dog, and she's openly grieving her pet.
Right.
And a lot of people have judgment for that because it wasn't a person. But I'm sorry, that is a family member.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if we agree or not. Are you grieving? I respect that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
It's one of those things where it's like your narrative doesn't interrupt mine. They are simultaneous.
Yeah.
Yes.
It could be the death of your favorite pen, but if it matters
But
to you, it matters to me.
Exactly.
Right? Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy. Because I think we do spend a lot of time, and we talk about judging all the time. Everyone judges, let's face it. It's just when you put a curb on it, right? But if you're angry, if you're crying, if you're just so upset you can hardly deal, and I don't understand what the big deal is, does not make your emotion any less valid. And what we've done through the years is, that's stupid, Cliff.
Yeah.
Why are you so worked up?
Yeah,
Stop
get
that.
over it.
Or Haeven, knock it off.
It's been 2
Go
weeks.
on,
You should be
go
over
on
this.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Watch Riverdale.
just smile.
You'll be fine. I love Riverdale.
Oh my
Riverdale's the
God.
best. Oh man.
That's one of the shows that we share in common.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm on
Oh, yeah.
season 2 now. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's those kinds of conversations instead of shutting each other down. And it is okay for you to say, thanks for asking, Dad. I don't want to talk about it right now.
I'm not ready right now.
Right? And
Yeah.
you know. But if you didn't feel safe, then you wouldn't do that, and then we wouldn't be having this wonderful open conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what it all comes back to, is that clearly you as a family unit started with transparency.
Yeah.
Right? You started with the fact that this is the way it is. We talk about things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where it takes us. And you guys are living proof that it can go really far, really dark, really quick.
It can. It's a scary world.
It's a world.
Yeah.
But together you beat that. Together you won. You know, and that in that togetherness, it wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
Even though you guys, I feel like you're a CSI episode.
I know, right?
Like, who would play you on TV? Think about that.
Yeah, think
I'll
about
have
it.
to start putting some names together.
Right?
Let's do it.
Because it really is, and it's one of those things where I hope the listeners are like, wow, that's never happened to me, so it's not applicable. It's like, no, this is just one extreme example of the fact that if you are open, transparent, and authentic, good things happen. Because at no point did I hear from your story that you were afraid to talk to Dad about this guy. Right? Like, that never
no.
entered the story. It might have been something in your guts where it's like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? But it never came through where it was like that Cliff was saying to Haeven, you know, what are you talking to boys for, or whatever, right? It was just, this is a red flag. We need to talk about this. And you phoned her rather than shut down her email or punished her.
Yes.
Yeah.
You kept
There was
the
no
Yes.
punishment
conversation.
Yeah,
involved
Because she
whatsoever.
didn't do anything.
She didn't do anything. She was taken advantage of by somebody who should have known better.
Right?
You know?
But a lot of times the ownership and the blame goes to the person that you can control.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can't control him, so you're going to control Haeven and you're going to punish her. You're going to take away her email. You're going to take away her cell phone because that's the way to do it.
Right.
She can't have communication if I take away the communication devices.
Yeah.
And that never entered this story, and I just can't. I'm putting my hands in the air. You can't see it right now. Transparency and authenticity. I need to get that goddamn tattoo because it just seems to be the root of all good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? That you can't go wrong if you just are open and honest.
Yeah.
Even when it's dark and
Exactly.
scary.
And even if it does start a scary conversation, you know, even if it is wildly uncomfortable. And I think that when we talk about mental health in general, most conversations start wildly, awkwardly,
So awkward.
you know, and then you get the implied eye roll sometimes because people don't understand. But I have found over the course of the last couple of years, especially through storytelling and doing advocacy and doing talks and working with Adrian and stuff, that as soon as you talk about it, every single time a person will say, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I my dad has depression, or I didn't really think about what that was. And like you said, Haeven, earlier, I'm not alone. Oh my God. You're like this teenage girl who really believed there's nobody like you out there. There's nobody who knows, right? Nobody has experienced this. And when you find out that there are tons of people, for better or worse, because we're beautifully flawed human beings, that you know, you're just able to bring up so much that needs to be addressed if we're going to save our kids,
Yes.
Quite frankly, for the drama of that moment, save our children, help them to be well-adjusted adults that we aren't.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like you marching into adulthood with being like having the resources to say things like I statements and being able to walk up to somebody at work and just be like, hey, so and so, I'm not having a great day. It looks like you're not. Do you want to go for a donut? Right? And having the authenticity to not back down away from those very truthful moments where they themselves are probably struggling and probably want to say something but may not have had a Cliff. May not have had a dad like that, right? Or may not have had a Lori that I can talk to, and that they themselves are shutting down, and that again, it needs to blossom outside of just the family, just the friends that we trust. Like we need to go into that next zone, and I think your generation is going to do that because the tools that are being, again, going into the schools and having talks and bringing in mental health as part of the curriculum, making it, I don't like the word, but the norm, right? Like having something as this is a base, this is a foundation for you to say things like the I'm not me today campaign.
Yeah, not myself today.
Not myself
that,
today.
I do talks for them for that. And Right By You is the one for students, for youth. But I was just going to say, because you said something brilliant. I'm saying it like she never says brilliant things. But
Very kind.
One time you said something really no. In an earlier cast, we were talking about that very thing about creating the space.
Safe
where,
space.
Where it's not just a building or a talk or a tool.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. Like I think Adri is a safe space for me.
Yeah.
So because we do a lot of stuff together, and if I can. She's one of the few people actually that I will message and say bleh, right? And it's okay. There's not the implied eye roll, and we need to be sort of these safe spaces going forward.
Yeah, it'd be like if society as a whole could start becoming like Wi-Fi hotspots of safe spaces.
Yeah,
I like that.
You just wherever you walk, there's somebody
awesome.
around there that understands and will listen. And
Would you coin that? Coin it.
All right, it's trademarked.
Yeah, if you're listening, that's totally trademarked.
Yeah.
But it's true. I can't wrap my head around the fact that if I step 5 feet this way, I'm in a safe space. But if I go out here, I'm just shit out of luck because I'm not staying in the safe space. So it's up to people to be those safe spaces and to walk with that. And it's an energy suck, and that's why it's good that I'm also hearing you know how to self-care.
Yeah.
Maybe some days better than others, I understand that. Oh my God, being a teenager, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go back there. But that you can self-care in the sense of, I need to lock this door.
Exactly.
And be like,
and stop talking. I need to stop talking.
Right? And that self-care doesn't, it's a buzzword that I have a lot of baggage with because there's a lot of like BuzzFeed bullshit going out about like, just having a lavender bath.
Oh my gosh, no.
Treat yourself to a $6
People don't know what it
latte.
actually really is. They don't know what self-care is.
But it's also very personal, and I think that's why it's so fascinating because self-care is very interpersonal. Like it's very centered on what your own needs are, and it might not look like self-care to somebody else.
Yes, true.
Like I was telling Lori that my brother's death anniversary was just the other day.
That's right.
And my dad and I sat down and marathon Star Trek for 8 hours straight.
Wow.
In pretty much silence.
Which sounds awful. However,
my partner Jason came in for like 2 of the episodes, and then he was like, "I can't do this anymore.
I'm done. I'm out.
What are you doing to yourself? This is torture." And that was our self-care, and it was like this unspoken. This is what we need. We need to be around each other, and we need to share something and have a common language of something, and also escape.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we've got the Novembers that have us down and want to hibernate and be really irritable and just eat carbs the whole time.
Yeah.
But if we could just sit together and just enjoy this thing that we have a common language because we're Trekkies, that was the self-care that we needed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really cost much to sit on the thing.
But you got what you needed.
This is the thing, right?
That's right.
And that is hard to put on a Hallmark card.
It really is.
To be like,
Let's go watch Star Trek
with your dad.
with your dad.
Happy Star Trek Day.
8 hours. It was awesome.
God love you.
Awesome.
Amazing.
But this is the thing is that I think we're getting to a point where we want to talk about it again because these are mainstream articles in BuzzFeed and that's popular.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we still don't really understand it.
We share them, right?
Yeah.
You read an article and you share it, and most of the time people don't read the article, but they like it and they share it. But it becomes that's really important to remember, and it's dangerous sometimes, because then when you have the conversation, that's what people might think self-care is. And I don't like buzz phrases too much either, but I live in the world and you have to use them. Yeah. But the one I really do like right now is you do you.
Yeah.
Because it really says a lot, you know.
Yeah, it does.
It's me taking the judgment away and saying, if you sitting fully clothed in the bathtub is helping you in that moment, you do you.
Exactly.
I'm going to eat the carbs, but you know, that's what I will do.
And
that's
I will eat the sushi.
Yes.
Oh, you guys, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
It was so great.
Thank you so
You
much.
said
You're amazing.
If one thing we can get out of this is that somebody listening to this cast can say, oh, Haeven's story resonated with me.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were other people feeling the same thing. That's the important thing.
100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you want to join the conversation, and we hope you do, come find us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. That's it, Stigma Fighters. And remember, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.